everyone. Today I am with Professor Louise. She's a professor in mathematics in the first and second year. And as I said, I absolutely love your lecture notes. And your students, like, they really love the way you teach. And I think you are an inspirational for other people, for other students, also like especially female students of female mathematicians to go after their dreams and for people in general.
Hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So once you were like in the beginning of your life, once you decided that you want to become a mathematician, how was the society looks at back in the past? How was the society? How was the view of society for female mathematicians?
Well, when I was at school, and I remember I was always very good at maths. I always enjoyed maths. I think that's true of most people who've ended up being professional mathematicians. You were always good at maths, and I guess for me I just really enjoyed it, and I loved all the problem solving. But yeah, there was certainly in those days. I mean, this is going back a while now, but there was very much a sense that boys were good at maths and girls weren't really supposed to be good at maths. So I was a bit of an oddbod, and some of my teachers were very. I think they just sort of used to sort of look at me and wonder what to do. Whereas they often used to just teach to the male students, but I was very sort of stubborn, and I kept at it, and I did want to show them I could I could be top of the class and do just as well, if not better, than the boys. So I've always been quite driven that way, and I've never. Because I didn't have any female maths teachers. I mean, that wasn't the thing. They were all male maths teachers. So I didn't really have any sort of role models. And my family are not academics or anything like that. So I was just very much, well, I'm going to do this and I enjoy it and I'll show you, sort of thing. So yeah. But I think for me, it's always been about enjoying it. And I've always loved maths. And I just find it so... it's so interesting and so just endlessly fascinating, and the more you find out about it, the more amazing it becomes.
Yeah.
So I've always wanted to sort of learn more mathematics, so that sort of kept me going. And I didn't really have an intention of being a maths lecturer. I just kind of followed the route that a lot of maths lecturers follow. You do your degree and you do well, so you do a PhD, you want to do research in an area. And then you do that, and then you kind of look for opportunities to do more of that, and then you get involved in some teaching, you enjoy that, and then you just get these positions, hopefully, within a university where you can do both, and that becomes your job. So you kind of fall into it almost without it being an actually intentional thing. Yeah.
So in the beginning, you knew you liked mathematics, but you didn't like say, I want to become a professor. So you love this, like, oh, wow. Yeah.
No, I didn't. I mean, I think I didn't imagine becoming an academic until I actually became one. I mean, it wouldn't have been something I would have thought of at school. I mean, I didn't even have a clue as to what I wanted to do for a job. And I guess I probably thought I was going to do something like engineering or something like that, because that's kind of mathematical, and that was a job. I didn't really understand what a mathematician did, and it was only actually much later. When I was a PhD student and I was doing some teaching, like we get our PhD students to do some teaching, helping out in classes, running supervision classes, things like that. Then I think I realised that I really enjoyed the teaching aspect of it, and I really enjoyed being able to explain maths to other people, and that's kind of where my career has gone, really, in that sort of direction. So, but that came quite late, I think.
Yeah, I think there's, at least for me, there's like this one person that's always like, you're a mathematician, and people ask you like, what's you gonna do next? Like, are we going to become an engineer? Are we going to become something like this? I think only few people, like, they understand like there's like lots of opportunities for a mathematician.
Oh yeah, I mean, in a sense, you can do most things with, if you're good at maths. What you can't do if you're not good at maths is learn how to be good at maths. That's very hard. So a lot of employers say, we're happy to take mathematicians and train them up to do something else, but if they've got the maths ability, that's inherent, and that's really important. But we can train them to do this, this kind of specialist stuff. Yeah. But it's very difficult to train people to do mathematics, if they've not actually studied it through, and they're not actually got that natural ability. That's very difficult, I think. So maths students end up doing lots of different things. Yeah, some of it mathematical and some non-mathematical. But I think you have the you know, you have this sort of ability to think rationally and deal with, you know, complex problems, and also, you know, just in the modern world, you know, being able to sort of be comfortable with data and, you know, computing and all the rest of it, that comes quite naturally to a lot of our students. So there are so many opportunities, you know. And I think most of our undergraduates don't know what they want to do when they come here. And that's fine. And I like that fact that they come to do a degree in maths because they really like maths, not because they necessarily want to become a whatever at the end of it. Yeah. And then they kind of think about what they can do with their maths while they're studying. Yeah.
I feel like mathematics is like kind of strengthens your brain. Like it's something like going to the gym or something where if once you like understand mathematics, you kind of know how logic works, and you can understand, you can connect it to other stuff, even if it's outside the subjects or outside the area of mathematics. It's like a pure mathematics. Yeah. You can apply it to other area, other aspects of life, because you already have this like programming, or this is like logical flow in your mind about stuff and the structures and those things.
Oh yeah, and you bring that into all, you know, all areas of life. I mean, my partner he's a psychologist, so he thinks very differently to me, so he approaches problems from a psychologist's point of view. But I treat everything in life as a mathematical problem. You know, it's just there. I've got to think about all the possibilities, all the options. I've got to sort of think about it completely rationally, and you know, that's the way I sort of deal with life. It's not just my job, and that can drive people a bit crazy, but but yeah, it's there is a sort of an inherent mathematical ability, I think, that you know, I think you're born with, and then I think, you know, but that only gets you so far. Yeah, I think to be good at to be a good mathematician, you do need to, you know, work hard and practice and immerse yourself in it. You know, that there's an awful lot of effort goes into it, and I guess it's similar to you know, being good at a musical instrument or something like that. You might have some inherent ability, but you have to do all that practice to reach, you know, those high levels. So I think sort of, yeah, learning to do mathematics, or learning to you know, play an instrument, or you know, do anything really, really well, it's the same thing. You know, it's a bit of natural ability, but an awful lot of hard work.
Yeah, I kind of think like once you go up in anything, like let's say in sports or anything, there's like some things that kind of differentiate people, that is like sometimes that's that you need to work very hard, and you also need to have this natural ability or this natural flow with mathematics or whatever stuff you're doing. Like there must be something.
Definitely. And I think there are sort of comparisons there, because I think, you know, what you'll also find if you're good at anything, that it's not just a linear sort of, you know, progression from being okay and then to be brilliant. You know, there are setbacks, and so, you know, you've got to be prepared to put up with that. You know, there are going to be times when you're going to be stuck and you can't solve a problem, and you just feel like you know, you don't really understand anything anymore, and you have to sort of get through that. And and you have to build your resilience, you know, and you have to be able to sort of accept that you're not always going to get the answer right, and you're not always going to be able to figure something out. But if you keep, you know, I think the thing that all mathematicians have in common is that they're really stubborn, and they, you know, they won't give up on a problem. You know, if you give me a problem to solve, I really have to solve this, you know, and you relish the difficulty, you know. So it's not, I think some people often get very put off and just sort of look at a problem and think, oh, that's too hard, I can't do that. But whereas if you're a mathematician, you kind of think, right, I'm going to figure this out. Really, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to sort of get my teeth into it and not give up until I've solved it. And that can, you know, that can lead to a lot of frustration, because you know, sometimes you just can't figure out how to do it.
Yeah, and you be stuck on it. So if there's a problem that's like, let's say from your own person or your own opinion, if there's a problem that there exists the solution, and someone is stuck on it, would you prefer for him to see the solution and see how the structure flows, like from the solution, like how you think as if you're solving it just from seeing the solution? Or do you prefer if the person like just try solving it, like spend lots of time on it?
Yeah, I think you need a bit of both, don't you? Because I mean, I have this discussion with my colleagues about this, because I'm a big believer in, you know, giving students example sheet questions, but giving them the solutions at the same time. I always say to them, you know, that's for you to use in a kind of sensible way. So I don't expect you just to look at solutions. and not try the questions. What I do is expect you to try the questions, but at a certain point, you know, you have to accept, because, you know, you've only got so long to study this course, so many hours a week you can spend on my course. At some point, you know, you get stuck and you can't do it. And then you want to see how it's done, okay? Because otherwise you're not going to learn. So ideally, in a perfect world, we'd all have, you know, so much time we could solve all the problems eventually. But you can't do that, can you, if you're studying for a course unit and you've got to do an exam in it? So I would say have a go. If you get stuck, then yeah, have a look at the solution. And then maybe you don't need to look at the whole solution. You just need a little hint, and then you go back and you carry on. And then, but I think there's a lot of value to students being able to interpret solutions as well as being able to do their own work. And I think it really depends on the student, because some students will want to do all the example sheet questions without looking at the solutions, and that's fine, great. And others will accept that, you know, they'll have a go and get stuck, and then it's a better use of their time maybe to look at the solution at that point, having thought about it, than just to battle on, or just to give up and think, okay, I'm stuck, but I haven't got the solutions to check, so I'll have to wait 2 weeks before I can see them. And then you've kind of moved on, haven't you? So I think having the solutions there to use as you see fit is useful for the student, because then they can manage that, what they're doing with them. And you know, even understanding some model solutions can be difficult. So understanding somebody else's mathematics is not a trivial thing. It's not like you're just saying, oh, the answer's 2. You've got to work your way through a whole series of steps and understand what those steps are. And if you're doing that, you're actually learning something. So I think being able to make sense of model solutions is actually a learning process as well.
Yeah,
it's not. But the best thing is, obviously, if you can solve the problem yourself, that is the best way to, or even the best way probably to learn something, is to actually not be able to solve the problem initially, and then have to really think about it and then figure out how to do it. That's probably the best learning process, because then you really get a real deep understanding of what the problem is all about. And so I guess, yeah, lecturers, we try and set questions that get students to think like that. So we don't just want to set a load of trivial things that you can do very easily without thinking about it. But probably we end up with some questions that are difficult for some students, and that's when you need the solutions, isn't it?
I think sometimes, like, when someone sees like the first line of solution of the first step, like, oh, I kind of like, this is how should I approach it?
Yeah, sometimes it's just getting going, isn't it? Once you know what to do and you get going, and then you can sort of say, okay, right, so I can see what to do now, so then I'll go away and do it, and then I'll come back and check I've got the right answer. Yeah, that's fine. I think that's a really good way to learn. And I think as long as the students are thinking about what they're doing and questioning it and trying to understand it, in a sense, it doesn't really matter too much, does it? It's applying those thought processes. And if they're not your thought processes, you're trying to understand somebody else's thought processes. So that's a very valuable exercise, I think. Yeah.
And there's something that I also read, that you did a postgraduate course, or a diploma in advanced in teaching and learning theory and those stuff. Yeah,
I did. Yeah, I've done several things over the years. I mean, I did when I was a new lecturer, and I well, at the time I didn't have a permanent job. I had some temporary positions teaching at the university, and I didn't know at that point whether I'd be able to become a permanent academic. And so one thing I was keen to do was to do something involving teaching. So I thought, well, I need to train up to be a teacher, and then if I can't get a job in university, I can hopefully get a job teaching A-level maths or something like that, because I thought that would be a nice other career. So I did a year of studying for PGCE, and it was great. Yeah, it was really good. It was a real eye-opener, that there is a sort of theory of learning and theory of teaching, and you don't just do it and do what was done to you. You actually have to think about all these different aspects of learning. And I learned a lot, and it was very difficult because I'd come out of my PhD. So I'd written my PhD thesis, but that was very different to writing an essay about teaching. And I had to write these essays on this course, 4,000 word essays, and I'd not written an essay since I was at school. And so it was a very steep learning curve for me to try and figure out how to write an essay. And so I also learned how to write, I think, which was good, as well as learning all the theory. And yeah, and I think from that point on, I've always been really interested in the sort of, you know, the educational aspect, the you know, the theory of learning, what we call the pedagogy, and you know what makes effective teaching and learning, and you know, and also trying to see it from the student's point of view, always thinking about the student's point of view. What are the students getting out of this? It's not just about me presenting something. This is about the students learning, you know, and how do they do that? What's the most effective way for me to help them to do that? So I always try and think about that when I'm teaching. And the other thing that I'm really very strong on, and I really think is, you know, is very powerful, is peer-to-peer support. So getting students to work together and support each other. And so things like our PASS scheme, which I've been involved in for an awful long time. And, you know, just that whole idea of trying to get students to sort of talk about mathematics and collaborate and share and learn from each other. I think is really powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's the peer learning. It also brings joy to the students. Like once you go and try to, especially if person loves, like if the student loves teaching and those sorts of stuff, like I'm actually having the same kind of position as a professor. I'm actually trying to teach other people mathematics, and you see them like, oh, like once they learn something and their reaction, once they understand something, it's so like it's so rewarding.
Well, they always say it's the best way to learn something is to try and teach it to somebody else. I don't quite agree with that. I mean, I think teaching something to somebody else is a really excellent way to. I think the best way to learn something is actually try and think about how you might write an assessment to assess that learning. Then you really get to the nitty-gritty of what it's all about. But certainly, I mean, even now, and I've taught courses, you know, I've been teaching for a long time. But, you know, even now, when I teach a course, a student can ask me a question and suddenly I think about something in a really different way. And I think, oh, yeah, I'd not thought about that. No, or just posing a question about it, or just coming up with a particular example. And suddenly you know, even though I've been teaching a course for, I don't know, 10 years, something like that, suddenly I'll see something in a slightly different way and it'll teach me something new. So I learn a lot by teaching, and I think you have to really think very hard about, you know, what you know, how are students actually going to, you know, get their head around these complex ideas, and by doing that you have to really immerse yourself in a subject. So I think, yeah, if you can explain it to somebody else in a meaningful way, then you really do understand what you're talking about. Yeah, that is the best way to learn, definitely.
I think it needs kind of lots of different level of communication, where if you explain something to someone at a certain level, you need to explain it like in another level. If it's like, let's say someone in public asks you something about mathematics, and you try to always think about how the other person is thinking, so you can deliver the information.
Definitely, yeah. And you know, trying to explain an idea to somebody else is in mathematics is very difficult sometimes. And you know yourself, you know, you can be solving a problem and you know how to do it, so you've kind of got it in your head, yes, I understand now how to do that. But then your friend will say, well, can you explain it to me? And you try explaining it, and it's really hard to explain it because you can see it, but you're trying to find the right language, aren't you, to so I keep moving my camera. I've just got this little ladybird that's crawling around on my desk, and I don't know how that's going. But yes, so I think it's for me, it's a lot of it's about communication, and in the end, as mathematicians, if we can't communicate what we do, then it's a bit pointless, really, isn't it? You know, if we can't. So I think being able to write things properly and explain things properly and make it clear to somebody else what your idea is essential, really, you know. And we should be doing probably more with that with our students to help them develop those sort of skills.
And there's something that I want to ask you about the theory of learning. Like, can you explain it like briefly? What's the theory of learning, or like, is it like how people learn differently, and how can
I mean, there were lots of theories of learning. I mean, there's a whole area, isn't there, of academic expertise about learning. I mean, you know, the psychologists study this, educational psychologists, and we've got an education department here at the university, you know, who you know, so people actually do that as a part of their research. You know, they actually think about how people learn. And it's interesting because I speak to some of the maths education people in our university, and it's really interesting because they obviously think about things in a very sort of more, much more sort of theoretical way. And I like to sort of immerse myself in that part of it, but then also I've got the practical side of it. You know, you're actually teaching a course unit. You've got to actually do what you need to do to make sure the students do well on that course unit. But it's nice to sort of see the links. So, I mean, there's various things I've learned over the years. I mean, I think what we talked about earlier about the student-centered approach. So giving students control over how they learn, but also within a sort of framework. So you can't just say, off you go. You know, here's the notes, off you go. But you've got to sort of guide people through and facilitate the learning. But you've also got to appreciate that a lot of it is done by it's all done by the student, but you're there to sort of make that as easy for them as possible. So, you know, providing the materials in the right way or in different formats, you know, and that's what things I like about, we have now videos, you know, video lectures, because you can use those in lots of different ways. You know, you could just ignore them completely and just read the lecture notes. That's one thing you could do. Or you can, you know, you can watch these videos and then try and take your own notes, or you could watch the videos and keep pausing and keep thinking about it and return to them. And, you know, you can use them when it suits you. So you've got some control over the time. And I think some of this online stuff that we've been doing, I think, you know, has a lot of potential really for giving students more choice, more flexibility in which they learn. And I know the past 12 months has been really difficult for everybody, and we've all hated not being able to see each other face to face. But I think there are some aspects of that online learning which I think will persist, and which we will actually find will make learning better for students, giving them a bit more choice and a bit more control of when and how they learn.
That's pretty interesting. Like, how do you see like education in the future? Will it be kind of blended learning, or would it be
I think, I mean, blended learning has now got a bit of a bad name for itself, hasn't it? Because people just think it's online learning, but it's not, of course. I mean, the thing is, we've been doing blended learning for a long time because, you know, even before the pandemic, a lot of our learning, you know, a lot of students' learning was done by interacting with online materials. Now, we didn't have videos necessarily, but we had, you know, all your problem sheets are there and your solutions and your lecture notes. So a lot of students, and the podcasts, we've had podcasts for a long time, you know, pre-pandemic. And I was finding that, you know, in my lectures, you know, the lecture attendance certainly was less than 50%, you know, once we got halfway through the semester. But that didn't necessarily mean I was worried that students weren't there in the lecture theatre at 9 o'clock on a Thursday or whatever, because I knew that students were interacting with the podcasts, and they were coming to the tutorials, and they were interacting with the, you know, the materials that I was putting on Blackboard. And, you know, students did very well. So we've always had, you know, we've had blended learning for a long, long time, since we've had really, you know, Blackboard and things like that to interact with. I mean, you know, in my day, when I did my degree, we didn't have any of that. And we just had to, literally the only way you could get hold of a copy of the notes is you had to go to the lecture, and you had to copy down on a piece of paper exactly what the lecturer said and wrote on the board. And some lecturers would just literally come in, stand at the board, and just basically just write everything on the board and just talk, just say what they were writing, and you would literally just copy it down and then go away, and you'd have to do something with it. Now, I know some people still teach that, but, you know, I think we have an opportunity with, you know, online resources to make it so much better. And so it's about getting the blend right, isn't it? And I think last year the blend was all wrong because it was all online and there was no live teaching. This year we have an opportunity to blend it right, don't we? We've got some online, we've got the live face-to-face, we've got all these tools we can use, you know, discussion forums and other ways of communicating, students communicating with each other, either, you know, on campus or online. And I think it's about finding the right blend, isn't it? And making sure that that's effective. And it won't be right, it won't be, you know, there won't be one answer to that, because some students will prefer working more online, and some will prefer being more on campus. And I think it's giving them choice, isn't it? So we're doing live sessions on campus, but we'll also be recording them, and there'll still be podcasts. So people can dip in and out, can't they? So I think it's going to be a really interesting year, because we're going to take, you know, what we've learned from before the pandemic, and what we've learned during the pandemic, and we're going to try to take the best aspects of both, I think, and hopefully get something which is better than either version.
Like I hope like the pandemic at least like it do have a positive impact in the education, like for the students, or for more interaction, blended learning.
Oh,
Do you
definitely,
feel like lots of students, at least me, I love going to the lectures, seeing like university, like people and the lectures and interacting with them. Like what is there like people that's similar to me? Do you see it? Is it from a social, like a social psychological point of view, like the sense of being in part of a community, being part of?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And that's a really, really important factor. And that's what we lost last year. And that was really hard for all of us. Yeah, no, I mean, the social side of learning, again, you know, there's a lot of theory about this. Psychologists, you know, will talk about this at great length, but it's really, really important that, you know, that people can interact with each other. And that's what we found difficult last year, that, you know, there was some interaction online, but it was very difficult. You know, we all had that experience, didn't we, being on Zoom calls and people not turning their cameras on and just having black boxes, and you know, people loath to say anything, just maybe putting a few things in the chat. And the chat function was a godsend, because at least people would write things in the chat. But yes, it was difficult for people teaching like me, because I wanted to see people's faces. I wanted to be able to have a proper conversation with people. I wanted to be able to, you know, get that buzz you get off a room where you're teaching a room full of people and you can sense that this is going really well. I'm getting some positive vibes here. Or the opposite, you know, you're kind of thinking, oh no, I've lost them. I've definitely lost them. I can see the puzzled looks on the faces. So that interaction was really key for staff and students, and we didn't have that. So absolutely. And we all have to feel part of the community, you know, part of the maths department, part of the university, you know, whatever your community is, you know, so that's much more difficult to get that feeling online. So as I say, what we want to do is take the best aspects of online and then blend those with the best aspects of being on campus, which is all about, being together in the room, you know, but doing something. What we want to do is sort of move away from, you know, just a lecturer stood at the front talking for 50 minutes. We want, if you're in the room, then the best thing to do is to interact with each other and interact with the lecturer. And that gives you that sort of real high quality learning experience, which you can't get online, I don't think. But delivering material, you know, talking and delivering material, I believe can be done just as well on a video as it can in a lecture theatre. So I think it's getting the right blend again, isn't it?
I think the most thing that at least I miss is from the videos is the feeling of the social feeling, like the feeling that, okay, you're part of a group, that all of you love mathematics, even though in the society, like if you go to someone I say I love mathematics, like in the society it may not be maybe weird, but once you go like you with the other group of people, like all of you love mathematics, love and enjoying this course, and see other people's faces, like every day you see them, the people faces.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, I don't. For me, the best part of the job is the interaction with students. You know, that's the thing that you know gets you out of bed in the morning. It really is. You know, the most exciting part. You know, being in a lecture theatre. You know, talking about mathematics, getting the students to do some mathematics, and that buzz you get when you know you kind of feel they're really getting this. They're really getting this. This is really exciting, and that's why I've always probably enjoyed the interactive sessions like tutorials and supervisions more than the lectures. I mean, I like to present, I like to talk, but what I really like to do is to be able to sort of work with the students and talk to the students and see them actually learning and learning together, you know, and that's really important. So yeah, I mean, that's going to be key this year, and we certainly are very keen to do lots of that. But what we want to do is make sure that when we are in the classroom or the lecture theatre with our students, we are getting them to interact with us and with each other, and they're not just sat there, you know, listening and writing, because that for me is a wasted opportunity, you know, because you know when you're on campus together, then you should be doing things that involve that interaction. So I think we will see more of that and move away from traditional lectures on campus to more interactive stuff. And
I think like moving from COVID to what's right now, there's lots of people that will appreciate the value of having the ability to go to lectures and having the ability to see like the professors are just going in there and just enjoying your time and You don't
Yeah,
have to wake up in the like a laptop or beginning of the day, seeing the lectures, and no,
yeah.
you actually have the opportunity to go enjoy your time, enjoy yourself in lectures and in theater.
I think what we'll see is obviously, people now have a choice, don't they? So they can come along to the lecture and the review session or the tutorial, whatever, and they can be there in the room, and they can be with their friends, and they can be interacting, as I've described. But I think there will be students, and some students, do like the flexibility of, either watching the recording later, or this year we're going to be having obviously live. Everything's going to be on live on Zoom at the same time as it's happening in the room. So we call this dual delivery, which is basically every session will have a live version and a Zoom version. And it'd be interesting to see how students select, whether they're going to be in the room doing the lecture live or on Zoom doing the lecture live. And we'll be really interested to see how that pans out, because as I say, pre-pandemic, before we had Zoom or anything like that, we had podcasts, and I typically, you'd only get half the students in the room, and the other half are clearly just interacting with the podcasts at some point. So this is not just a pandemic thing. And I think for students, for some students, they really, really like being in the lecture theatre, and I completely get that. And I think that's great that we have these on-campus classes again, and that's going to be great for them. But there are other students, for whatever reason, it's difficult for them to be in the room, or some students might be traveling in from wherever. They've got to get 2 buses and a train to get on campus. They might only have 1 lecture that day. It's probably a better use of their time on that day to be on the Zoom call, and then they can come in maybe later in the week. They've got a few classes on one day, they might decide to have that on campus. So I think it's all about the flexibility, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think if students can choose to do one or the other, that's the best option. And I spoke to my advisees last year, and a lot of them were saying they really missed the on-campus stuff, and most of them said that. But there were a couple that said, you know what, this online stuff's brilliant for me, because I can just work, I can deal with this. And I had one student who, I won't mention his name, but he graduated last year, and he'd always struggled with getting out of bed and getting into class and getting himself organised. And in his 3rd year, of course, everything was online, and he just really got his act together, and he aced it. He got a first, and I was so pleased for him, because he struggled so much with the kind of trying to manage himself. And he just had such a nice experience of it all. Now that was an exception, and I appreciate that lots of students had a really horrible time last year and missed everything. But I think, as I say, it's choice, isn't it? So students can come on campus and be with their friends, and there's lots of study space here. It's not just coming to lectures, and they can do that as much as they want. And then there's the option of using the online materials as well. And they will, every student will find what works for them. And that's really important, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I'm thinking about it. I used to think now thinking about it, I see like there's 2 sides of things. Like there's people like me where they're missing university very much, that they're depressed that there's no more university. And there's also other people where maybe they don't like being in a big room with lots of students, and they just prefer to study at home or just do the stuff at the home, like instead of waking up, like for whatever reason. And that's great. Like if you're this kind of person, you have what you want, and if you're this kind of person, you have what you want, or you get what you want.
Yeah. And it's to say it's empowering students. So it's about this student-centered approach to learning, that students have choice, in how they learn, when they learn, and to a certain extent what they learn. We've always had choice in what they learn, because that's why we have lots of options and things. So we want people to be able to tailor their degree to suit their interests. But now we have the sort of options for how and when they learn as well. And I think that's really just adding to the experience. And we've got to take into account that students are from lots of different backgrounds, lots of different circumstances. Some people really want to be on campus all the time. Some people just maybe want to come in once or twice a week. So some people want to study completely remotely. Yeah.
Do you see one day that education, we can be in education with VR tools and interacting with this?
Well, maybe. I think still people will want that face-to-face option. There'll still be lots of students who actually want to be able to you know, come on campus, actually, you know, come and talk to a lecturer, actually be in the classroom with other students. I think people will always want that.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you want to do a completely online course, there are ways to do that. You know, there are institutions that offer that. But I think our students who come here obviously want that on-campus experience, don't they, as well?
So you predict that more students gonna choose the on-campus option over the online videos?
Well, who knows? I mean, we'll have to see, won't we? I think it's going to be interesting to see. You know, I think the first few weeks, I think everybody who can come on campus will come on campus, because we've all missed it so much.
All missed it.
And we'll all, you know, everybody will want to be in the classrooms, the lecture theatres, seeing their friends. But I wonder what's going to happen, you know, once we get into November, December, and it starts getting cold and dark and rainy, and you know, we've got a 9 o'clock lecture on a Thursday. You know, you've been out the night before? Do you really want to, you know, get on the bus, or you know, you're just going to switch your Zoom on, or possibly watch the podcast later? I think it'll be interesting to see how things pan out. And I think, you know, as I said, we've got this flexibility now. Students can learn in lots of different ways. How they're going to choose, you know. And I think you're always going to get students who want to come to the lectures, absolutely. And we've always had that, and that's great, you know. And I love, if I'm teaching, I love to see people in the room, because that's how I get, you know, the reaction, the buzz. But I also think, you know, I think especially for the lecture material, if you're just delivering content, I think it's actually, in some ways, easier to do that online. It's the interaction, isn't it? What you can't replicate online is that kind of being able to talk to your friends, work on problems together, you know, ask the lecturer questions in a meaningful way, show them what you've written down, you know, say, is this right? You know, am I doing the right thing here? That's much more difficult to replicate online, isn't it? So I think that's what people will come for. They're coming to classes to do that kind of thing, rather than just sit and listen to someone talk.
I think like both of them are kind of not hard, like both of them have their own people. It's like thinking to yourself, should I wake up 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. and go and work out?
Yeah.
Or should I just do the workouts at something like in the evening, like 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. There's like people for both options.
Yeah, I mean, some people like that, don't they? Some people like to work very late, and you know, I know there's some students are sending you emails at 3 a.m. because they're thinking about some maths at that point. They want to know what you think. Of course, I'm fast asleep by then. Oh, you know, you can see the timestamp on the email, can't you? So I know there are students who like to work late, and like, you know, but there are also students who don't like that, and I think some students really like the structure of having a timetable and classes. You have to actually, you know, this is when you're doing your algebraic structures lecture, this is when you're doing this, and actually they love that structure, and other students prefer the, you know, being a bit more flexible. I think whatever you're doing, I mean, in the end, there's a certain amount of responsibility on students to manage their time. You know, as a lecturer, I can provide you with all these opportunities to learn, give you all these materials, I can do all these videos and live classes. But in the end, the students then got to do something with it, and it's what they do with it that's the important thing, isn't it? It's their learning, and we can tell you, you know, we expect you to spend 2 hours a week on this activity or this activity, but in the end, the students actually then got to do that, find a way to fit that into their life. And you know, for some students, that will mean they do a sort of 9 to 5, and they do their studying in the day, and then they don't think about the. Some students will be doing some in the evening and weekends, and I think a lot of it depends on this, you know, the way they work best, but also, you know, some people just have responsibilities, don't they? Some people have family responsibilities, or they might have a part-time job, and so you've got to work it in around that. And so, you know, I think we've just got to accept that we've got to make it as flexible as possible, and let the students manage that. I think, you know, there's a certain responsibility on the students to manage their learning, and you know, that's part of being a university student, isn't it?
Yeah,
not being at school anymore.
Yeah, we're not.
So I think some students get the hang of that quite well, and some students, it takes them a little while to get into that idea of, well, I've got control now, I can decide when I'm going to learn. Not when my mum tells me when to do it. Yeah.
No one gonna tell you, like, you don't have to. That is something like I think, at least for me, like, because I was in the school, then I came to foundation year, and there was like, okay, I don't have to be, there's no school anymore. should they go to university or not? Like it's something like, because in high school, if you didn't go to university,
Yeah,
school, there's like these problems from the school manager. They contact your parent, like you have to go to school, but whatnot. There's this freedom,
yeah.
which I think sometimes in the beginning can be quite shocking for some people.
Oh
Like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. You know, that suddenly you've got all this freedom. You know, you're often living in a new city, you know, meeting all these new people, and there's lots of exciting things going on, you know, social side of things. And I think it's very easy to lose track of, you know, your studying if you're not careful. So I think you do have to have a bit of discipline. And I think some people will say you're not used to that because they might have been, you know, their learning might be very managed before, managed by teachers, managed by parents. You know, they've pretty much known when to work and when not to work. And now it's a case of, well, I've got all this freedom, I've got all these experiences I can get involved in, you know, all these wonderful things going on. But you have to kind of manage that time. You have to kind of set out, you know, almost like writing down a little sort of timetable when you're going to do everything in the week, not just when your classes are, but when am I going to study for this course? When am I going to, you know, do my part-time job, or when am I going to do my sporting activity, and being quite organized about it, I think. And then, you know, making the most of the time you've got, because, you know, there's so many opportunities. And of course, we want students not just to be doing maths, we want them to be doing all these other exciting things that you can do at university. You know, the extracurricular stuff is really important, maybe having a part-time job, all these things that are going to help you, you know, get a job at the end of it, as well as your degree. So you know, it's finding time to do it all. So time management's a really important thing, I think, for students. Yeah.
I think sometimes, like, if there's no time management, there will be lots of stress for the student. Like sometimes once the student is all focusing like at the academic, there would be very stressful with the student. And
yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, I would never say to a student, you know, you need to just focus on
the
exemption. Absolutely, I think that's not healthy at all. And I think students who do that often find they just crack under the pressure, because you can't keep doing that. You've got to have some relaxation. You've got to have an opportunity to, you know, meet with your friends and go and do, you know, social things. But also, I'm also talking about all the other opportunities. You know, all the other things that are going on campus, you know, the stuff the career service is doing, you know, thinking about your future prospects, you know, maybe applying for jobs even, you know, when you get moved through your degree. All that stuff takes time, and you just have to manage that, you know. And I know a lot of students will say, I haven't got time to do this, I haven't got time to do that. And I think, well, yeah, I get that, because in some ways that's life, isn't it? And as you go through your life, you'll always find there were demands on your time, and you know, the demands change when you get into a job. You know, you've got different demands, but then you might also have a family and, you know, other things going on in your life that you have to kind of manage. And sometimes you look back on being a student and think, oh, it's easy then, I don't have to worry about me. you know, at the time you felt really sort of stressed at the time, but when you think, oh, well, it was simple, all I had to do was just focus on one thing. But yeah, no, I do appreciate it's a problem. And so I think there's a I mean, whether we do enough of this, you know, as academics to support our students to help them manage the time, I think it's a bit of a personal thing, but there are techniques you can use, obviously, to make more effective use of your time. Yeah.
And I will ask you like more questions right now about the course of group. You said it teaches algebraic structure 2 and foundation to pure mathematics. Is there a favorite topics in algebra that you enjoy the most?
Oh, my favorite topics. Well, I think for the foundations course, the one thing I really like about that course is it's the first pure mathematics course that students do at university. So it's the first time they're really exposed to this idea of mathematical reasoning, proof, and all the sort of formal side of mathematics, which is really the course says it's the foundations, isn't it, of how you build sort of whole theory of mathematics, and, you know, the idea of proof and the idea of theorems and you know, formal mathematics. And so I feel quite honoured that I give the first course in that, because that's setting the foundations for what they do in the rest of their degree. So I love teaching proof, and I think it's, you know, it's a difficult topic because students do find it hard, but I love sort of, you know, helping them to understand that there is a a method, there is a structure, you know, you can apply a lot of kind of, there is a sort of, you can actually, you know, build a sort of structure around this, even though, you know, actually to do a mathematical proof, in a sense, is a very creative thing. You know, you can't just set out and know what's going to happen. You know, there has to be that spark of inspiration sometimes, but there are sort of methods for actually, you know, attacking a problem and actually, you know, to sort of break it down and use a particular approach. So I really enjoy that. I love all the stuff I do on infinity and infinite sets and all that sort of mind-blowing stuff about different types of infinities and all the counterintuitive stuff that comes with infinite sets. So I really like all that, because it sort of blows your mind a bit, which, you know, is nice to be able to do again in the first semester of first year, to actually sort of take them into these kind of mind experiments, you know, that they may not have even thought about before. So yeah, the foundations course is great. The algebraic structures, I love teaching algebraic structures because it's just such a lovely topic, you know, ring theory, understanding, you know, how you can take these properties of the integers and sort of look at other structures with similar properties. And essentially that's it. It's sort of taking a specific example and then generalizing and seeing how you can build this whole theory around these things called rings, which are essentially things that look a bit like the integers. And then I just love that course, the way it sort of builds, and it's, you know, we start at basic ideas, and then we move on to factor rings and homomorphism, and then it all comes together at the end with this idea of constructing extension fields to find roots of polynomials, and that isn't the end of it, of course. That's just the start of all this like higher level algebra that students will go on to study later. And so I kind of feel it sort of, the course sort of builds to a crescendo, and then we get to a point then where hopefully students can think, oh, this is great, now I want to go on and study more of this. So it's, you know, it's an introductory course, and it only goes so far, but hopefully it gets people sort of excited about the sort of power of algebra and where you can take that, and how you can so really start to understand different areas of mathematics by understanding these fundamental properties. So yeah, it's a very powerful thing, and you know, pure mathematics is always a wonderful thing to teach, because it's so beautiful, and you know, you get these amazing insights and these wonderful proofs, and then, as I said, it's this power of trying to bring together quite disparate areas of mathematics under one umbrella. Really, you know, it's that deeper understanding, isn't it? Ah, right, so now I see what the connection between polynomials and, you know, integers, there's actually a lot they have in common, you know. And you can, and you know, on the surface they don't seem to have an awful lot in common, but then you sort of bring the theory together. It's very, very powerful. So yeah, great. And I do enjoy that course a lot. Yeah.
And I think mathematics is just so truthful. Like, it's so true. Like, everything just built from definitions, and from definition you build like lemmas and then theorem. Then, like, it's so true. Like, you know, you cannot say like, no, this is not true. Like, it's, for me, it's just so true. Like, and all the results, they just so true. They're the pure meaning of being true in life. It's like, they're just so true. Like,
it is, and it's about sort of trying to sort of understand patterns, isn't it? So often mathematics, before even you get to the definition stage, what's happened is, you know, people start to look at examples. So people are looking at examples and seeing connections and patterns emerging from examples, and then you try and sort of pull out of that what are the key things that all these examples have got in common. You know, what has this structure and this structure got in common, because they seem to be exhibiting similar properties. And from that commonality, then you get your definitions. What's key here? What do we need to assume? What do we need to sort of say this structure must have these, you know, axioms, and then from that we can prove all this theory around it. And so it, you know, ultimately it's all motivated by people thinking about examples and spotting patterns, or, you know, working in one area and then thinking, oh, how does that relate to this thing over here? And how can I connect the two? Where's the bridge? So it isn't just, and I think sometimes students don't always appreciate that, because when you start a course, the first thing you do is put up a definition. Right, this is what we're working with. And what they don't see, I guess, and maybe we should do more of this, maybe some people do this for their teaching, is motivate that by looking at different examples. So, okay, this is what you're familiar with. And then from that, we're going to say, okay, so we're pulling out the key features of that. And then we're going to say, what other, you know, what other structures have that property, and what do they have in common, and what can we deduce from that? So it's a very powerful method, that mathematical method, you know, that idea of definition, theorem, proof, definition. And I know a lot of students say, oh, why do we have to have so many definitions? Why are there so many proofs in your course? But it is the nature of pure mathematics that's the way we approach it, you know, and that's been done for centuries, and it's very powerful, yeah. But I would say, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I think once I saw it, I used to see it the other way around. Like I used to see definitions, then you just build from the definition, and right now seeing it from like, okay, there's this patterns, and from this pattern you see like there's a lot of patterns, and you try to make a definition so you fit all those patterns into something. Like it's not the other way around. It's not like there's definition and things fall from the definition. Historically, it's first they recognize the patterns and they try to come up with some definitions. And
that's right. And then, you know, then how far can you push that? You know, what can you then deduce from those definitions? And that's where it gets really powerful. You start to prove theorems that then apply to anything that satisfies these definitions. So it's very, very powerful. And, you know, I understand that pure maths is not for everybody, and a lot of students prefer the more application-based subjects, and that's great, you know, because then there is a lot of theory in the application topics as well, but you're actually seeing, you know, you're actually applying it to a particular problem or a particular situation. You know, you can see how you can use this to solve a real world problem. And so I can see why that's very appealing as well, the sort of applied side of the subject. But I'm very much on the pure side of me. I do like the sort of abstract mathematics, and trying to just, you know, discover things about the mathematical universe, you know, that we didn't know before. It's all out there. We just need to understand it.
What made you love the pure part of mathematics?
I just think it's incredibly beautiful, and I guess it appeals to the sort of, in me, the sort of problem solving. You know, when I was a child, I just always wanted to solve problems, and so, you know, it's wanting to understand things, it's wanting to see how things connect. But I think over the years, I've just always been blown away by some of the, you know, when you meet a new idea, blown away just by how incredibly powerful and beautiful it is. I mean, I remember when I first, you know, met complex numbers, which would have been when I did further maths at A level. And, you know, at first it's just technique, isn't it? It's just a, you know, do this, do that, whatever. And then you start to appreciate that how powerful it is. It's just incredible what, you know, you can suddenly solve a whole range of problems you could never solve before, because you've got this I, you know, the square root of -1. And then you get this amazing, you know, formula, don't you? E to the I pi plus 1 = 0. And that is just mind blowing, because that's just, I mean, that's something fundamental, isn't there, going on there? Because you've got these mathematical constants, E, I, and pi, and you've got 1 and 0, and you've got equality and addition. And you know, that's just mathematics pared down to its bare bones, isn't it? And so there's something incredibly beautiful about that I've, you know, never got over, really. I just think that's the most amazing, especially you know, that's clear, that clearly tells me that there's mathematics at the heart of the universe, you know, that we are living in a mathematical universe, and you know, that these fundamental constants are at the heart of that. So that's just mind-blowing. I don't know about you, but I think that's just so thrilling when you discover that. And you know, when I first started to do my PhD, and I was looking at, you know, these sort of algebraic structures and geometries and graphs, and just seeing how you could explain different parts of mathematics, bringing them all together, and how the power of that, and being able to uncover things by using, you know, different techniques. And yeah, I mean, I always find the whole thing just, it's like you know, you're kind of walking around a very dark room with a torch, and you kind of gradually spotting things, and then you sort of, then the torchlight gets bigger and things start to connect, and then you get this bigger and bigger picture of what's going on, but it's all there. It's just, you're just uncovering it. So it's just thrilling, yeah.
For a pure mathematician, do you think like the visualizing aspect, like there's like visualizing part, or is it more of logical, pure flow? Like with,
You mean it's the way you visualize mathematics, you mean?
yeah.
Well, I think people visualize it in different ways. I mean, I think some people have a very geometric view of mathematics. So they see things in pictures and they see things geometrically. And I think some people see things more algebraically. So they see it symbolically and they're very good. And I think I kind of switch backwards and forwards between the two. So I can't really understand the algebra without the geometric aspect. I can't really understand the geometry without the algebra. So it's bringing those two bits together. But I do have a very visual approach. So I always, if I'm dealing with a mathematical problem, I always need to draw something. I always need to, you know, have something on paper, and I have to make a sketch because I have to be able to see it.
Wow.
To understand it. Yeah.
Even in algebra, like you draw a picture, you draw something for.
Well, just, I mean, I've used. You mean GeoGebra?
Like no, I mean like in pure algebra, like in algebraic structures and those stuff. Do you use like diagrams in solving a big complex problems?
Yeah. I mean, I had, you know, all the sort of mathematics I've done myself, you know, in terms of research has always involved, yeah, some trying to understand, you know, a structure, and then a lot, you know, you have to prove things, you have to do the algebra and the, you know, the general case, but having a picture there helps me to see my way through to what that generalization is. So I've always drawn pictures. Yeah.
It seemed like a new method I made, like because I always like approach algebra from like pure like proofs, and I've never really tried to see it as a diagram, even though like there's in the homomorphism and those stuff, there's always like this isomorphism and this homomorphism too, and this picture like a 1, 2, 3, but I never like, I always like when there's a book or something, I don't really see it much, but I think it's a good way to see a picture and see also a visualization or diagram.
Yeah, for me it helps, and it might not be a picture like a graph, but it might just be you know, if a sense of what, you know, what you do, and maybe it's not even a picture, maybe it's more just a case of using some typical examples to illustrate something. So you're actually thinking, what in the context of this particular set, what does this look like? And then trying to understand it. But that's going back to the use of examples, isn't it? So it's using well-chosen examples to help illustrate the theory, I think is absolutely essential. Yeah.
And in terms of mathematical research, it's something that's, for me, it's something that's, I'm really worried because I've never really done any research in my life. And there's this society stuff like researchers, you gotta be very clever, you gotta be like something like Einstein or something to come up with research. What's your opinion about doing research? Is it hardworking, or is it like just pure intelligence, or is it a mix between the two?
I mean, it is hard. I mean, it's tough, you know, and you know, it's tough for lots of reasons. It's tough because, you know, you're dealing with, you're trying to discover something that hasn't been discovered before, or invent something that hasn't been invented before. You know, and in any area, any academic area, you know, and what you will find is that in some areas, you know, that especially that have been around for a while, you know, all the easy problems have been sorted. the only ones left are the difficult problems. So sometimes it's quite exciting to be involved in a new field because there's lots of new problems, and you know, you can pick off the easy ones very quickly. But I think it is challenging, and you have to really immerse yourself in it. You know, if you're doing research, whether that's, you know, research to mathematics or any other kind of research, you have to really immerse yourself in it. You have to be thinking about it, you know, almost day and night, and it's in your dreams, you know. And sometimes, you know, I've been sort of, I can be sat, when I did my PhD, I remember I was sat in my office all day and I'd be thinking, you know, think, and just getting completely stuck. And then I'd be cycling home and suddenly, bing, you know, it occurs to me when I'm halfway home on my bike, because sometimes you just need to let your mind just kind of relax a little bit, and then the ideas come. And the thing is, there's no guarantees with research. You know, you can set out to solve a problem, but there's no guarantee you'll be able to solve it. And I think that's more the case in mathematics maybe than some more experimental subjects. If you do an experiment, you do an experiment, right?
Yeah.
And it tells you something. Whereas if you're trying to prove a theorem, you know, and you can't prove it, then you can't prove it. Now, you know, you do learn things by trying to prove things and trying to understand things. You will move on, but you know, there's no guarantee when you set out to prove a mathematical result. it's going to be a trivial thing, or it's going to take you, years to do this. And we know that from history, that some mathematical problems that look very simple on paper can take centuries to resolve, may never be resolved, So I think it's difficult, but it's also, so exciting, when you actually crack a problem, the elation that you feel when you it's amazing, it doesn't last, because then you get on to the next problem, but I think you have to genuinely be completely, completely devoted to it, and completely engaged with what you're studying. So you have to be really, really passionate about what you're researching, because it takes over your life. You're thinking about it all the time. So it's not something you can just switch on and off. I'll do an hour today. It doesn't work like that. And this is why, obviously, universities work around this semester system. So, we'll be teaching our students for half the year, and then, in the rest of the time, you've got this sort of intense time to sort of do these other things that need that kind of intensity of attention. So I think, the summer, my colleagues will be doing, lots of research and things. It's not just that they go off on holiday for 15 weeks. you just flip into a different mode, So I think doing mathematical research is, you have to be completely dedicated, or any kind of research, So it's not for everyone, but it's if you are passionate about your subject, it's a really interesting thing to do.
I think it's I think, like, if someone want to go to research, he must be passionate. He doesn't go for research for wanting to solve a specific problem. Like, he doesn't go, I don't really know how to describe. Let's say you're in competition, wrestling competition. You're in wrestling because you love wrestling. You're not in wrestling to get like a gold medal.
Yes, I think you've got to very much do it, as you say, for the process. You've got to really enjoy doing what you're doing, and the goals are there, and great, if you can solve the problem and you can, win the Nobel Prize or whatever, but most people won't, and you've got to be motivated by your passion of the subject, and your interest in it. And I think being a mathematician, there are lots of other interesting aspects of that. It's, I said, the teaching is really, really important, but interacting with colleagues and all the other things that we do as part of an academic's role, making sure the university runs properly and the students are happy, and all these aspects of being an academic. It's not just about teaching and research. There's a whole load of other stuff going on as well. So being an academic is a really interesting job, and but there are many aspects to it.
For me, you're pretty, as like an athlete, like you've been having
Didn't go that far.
You've been like doing yoga classes for the graduate student for around 20 years, right?
Oh yeah. So I started doing so I've practiced yoga since I was 18. So I've been doing yoga pretty much all my life. And I do yoga every day. I'm just crazy about yoga. I think it's a wonderful thing to practice, and it has so many physical, mental, spiritual benefits. So I love it. So but I started teaching a class 20 years ago, and it really came about because I've been teaching this class at this adult education centre, and I was talking to some colleagues at work, and they said, "Oh, you should teach a class here," and I said, "Okay." So we started off doing this lunchtime class just for an hour, and it was mainly sort of the administrative staff, because they're the ones who'd asked me about it. So there was about half a dozen of us, and we started doing it. Anyway, 20 years on, I'm still doing this same class, and we've kept it going through the pandemic. We've done it on Zoom, and I do it every week, and it's people, it's staff, it's a few postgrads. I've even had undergraduates come. I don't tend to advertise it to undergraduates because obviously don't want hundreds of people to, but if the odd student, if I get into a conversation with a student, they say, "Oh, I'm really into yoga," and I say, "Oh, you should come to my class," and it's all free, and we just do it for fun, but it's a great way to meet your colleagues and PhD students in a different way, because normally you're meeting them through your work, but this is just a much nicer way to sort of get to know people. And yes, and we so we have, you know, professors, we have PhD students, say some undergraduates, some people just to work at the university who I know, you know, come along. And yeah, we've just been doing it for 20 years and it's always just kept going. And I've always said, as long as people want to come, I'll keep doing it. So yeah, it's been going a long time and I'm still happy to do it. So and eventually we'll get back on campus doing it, but at the moment it's all on Zoom, so that's okay.
What's the benefit of yoga? Like, do you do it? I think, like, what's the benefit of yoga? Is it like mostly, is it like physical? I've tried to do it once and I think the balance is just so hard to be balanced and
Yeah, I mean, I think initially when you start doing it, it feels very physical because it's all about being stretchy and balancing and, you know, all the rest of it, trying to get into these postures. But as you practice it more regularly, you realize that there's actually, it's much deeper than that. And it actually gives you a way to really control everything. So obviously it keeps you physically fit and, you know, it keeps your body working well, but then it's also a really strong, powerful way of sort of controlling your mind and the breathing part of the practice and the focus. So it's all about, so it's not just doing the postures, it's about thinking about your body and connecting with your body and connecting with your breath and connecting with your energy. And a lot of it's connected with mindfulness, and you know, that's become a big thing recently. But it is, when you're doing a practice, you're very much in the moment and you're very much focused on your body and your breath and how you're feeling and how your mind is working and about trying to calm everything down. And if you practice every day, what you find is that you just can bring that into your everyday life. So, you know, if I'm in a situation where I'm feeling like this is very stressful, I just sort of go into my yoga mode and I just sort of think, okay, fine, I'm just going to breathe. I'm just going to, you know, just
calm down,
get it all in perspective and be very sort of focused. And I know that really helps me because I know, you know, before, I mean, one of the reasons I started doing yoga as a student was because I used to get quite stressed out about exams and studying and like everybody does. And it really helped me to sort of manage that. But as I've gone through my life, because I've done it my whole life pretty much since I've been an adult, it's just helped me get through some really, you know, difficult parts of my life. And and I know it makes me stronger physically and mentally, and it just makes me able to cope with things that I probably couldn't cope with. And I really like the spiritual side of it as well. I mean, that's a lot of it's about connection, not just with yourself, but also with, you know, everybody else and the universe, and that kind of breathing, and, you know, and practicing with other people and sharing that energy. It's a wonderful thing. It's a very powerful tool, but it's very hard to explain to someone who's not practiced it because you have to kind of do it, and then you start to understand how powerful it is when you do it. It really is. You can't read about it. It's not one of these things you can read about and then know about. You've got to practice it. And then, you know, the top yoga teachers all say, you know, it's all about the practice. You get on your mat and you do your yoga. And after doing that for a long time, you really start to understand things. And yeah, for me, it's been a really powerful tool. And it's not for everybody. But I try and spread the word and try and get people into doing yoga because it's been really great for me. And I'd like to share that with people. So, yeah.
I think I'm not sure about yoga, so if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But I read that with mindfulness and meditation, even your brain kind of changed. Like some area of the brain, like the hippocampus, if I'm correct, it's like lots of psychology stuff. They kind of increase the size, and I'm not sure about yoga by itself, but I think with meditation, there's this research by meditation. I think they were done like for 3 months, which is 12 weeks, and they show some structural changes in meditation and in the brain itself, which is in the hippocampus. That's usually, it's where the fight and flight response and the fight and flight and freeze response is.
Yeah. I mean, I've not read all the research, but I know, you know, there's a lot of research into that kind of thing nowadays because it's become a big thing. Mindfulness meditation, it's been around forever, hasn't it? But you know, when you sort of read about some of the you know, the ancient texts around yoga, and you know that people were saying this 2,000 years ago, you know, so you know that it just changed the way you think, and then the way you react to things, and this is what I found, you know, by practicing it. It just helps you manage things. You know, you just be able to manage things in a different way. You're able to sort of think things through, and you don't panic, and you don't kind of get stressed. You just sort of, I mean, I would say that I never get stressed, because I do, but it's a very powerful tool for me to manage that. So I can always stay in control of that, and I can manage it using my breath. And you know, when I've gone through difficult periods in my life, that I always want to do more yoga, because doing more yoga helps me to deal with difficult things. And that always has really helped me. And you know, it's just a very powerful tool. It's also really helpful, you know, when you're kind of doing sport and things like that, you know, it protects you from getting injured. And I've, you know, I do a lot of other sort of sporty things, and if I do get injured, I find the yoga really helps me to rehabilitate. And so it's got many uses. Yeah.
And is it also because I've only done yoga twice, so this is my experience from doing yoga twice. And
you need to do it a lot more than that. It's not something you dip in and out of. You have to kind of be dedicated to it. Yeah.
It's like any sport, like you have to put time into it. You have to do it like every day. If you want to be good, if you want to see the benefits, you cannot like go to the gym one day and like, okay, people tell me.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, I mean, the more you practice, obviously, the easier it gets to do the postures, and you become more flexible and you become stronger. But you know, that it is that sort of mental, spiritual side which strengthens as well. But I think the thing about yoga, it's not so goal driven. It's not like I'm doing it because I want to be able to stand on my head, or I want to be able to do a back bend, or I want to be good at doing that. It very much is about being in the moment. So I believe, you know, anybody can practice yoga. You don't have to be super strong or flexible, but that flexibility and strength comes as a sort of byproduct of practicing regularly. And you know, it does make it easier to go a bit deeper into your body if you kind of got that flexibility. You don't have to kind of think, oh, that hurts. You know, you can just sort of go into a posture and really experience it. But I think people, I think you have to practice it, because otherwise the power of it, you know, the effect on your body and mind will not be strong. And so, but it is very much about doing it rather than be doing it for any particular aim. And you know, I mean, I have got better at doing the postures as I've done more of it, but that's not really the point. To me, it's about the understanding of it all. And I think, and even when I'm injured or something, or I've not been able to do yoga, you know, I've not been able to do some of the postures because I've done, you know, whatever in my life, I've had to be able to stop doing the practice. I can still do yoga, because I can just sit and breathe. You know, that's me doing yoga. I'm focusing on my mind and my body, and I'm just very present, and I'm, you know, I'm there, and I'm experiencing that. That to me is yoga, and the postures just help you to do that. So yeah, and I think that I mean, I could talk about this all day. You'll have to shut me up. But there's a Western and an Eastern approach. Now, in the West, the approach to yoga is very much as a physical practice. You know? So you say, I do yoga, and everyone says, oh, you must be really flexible, and you must just stand on your head or whatever, you know. But in the East, it's very much more spiritual and philosophical. So the whole philosophy of yoga, and it's not just about practicing postures. It's about the way you approach life. It's about your morals and your, but it's also that sort of meditative side of things as well. And I think you know, it's the whole picture, which, as I say, you start to pick up on as you do more of the physical practice. That starts to come in. You can't ignore that.
Yeah. So I can describe you more of like taking the Eastern philosophy of yoga, like you do it for yoga as a lifestyle.
Yeah, it is very much. It seeps into the other parts of your life eventually. You know, if you practice it regularly, it's not just going to do a yoga class for an hour and then you walk away and just carry on as before. It starts to change the way you think about yourself and the world and everybody else around you. You can't help it. in a good way, hopefully.
Yeah, you become more calm and
and about you know, being able to appreciate things in the moment, you know, and just being able to focus on what's happening now and not worry too much about what's happening in the future or what's happened in the past. It's that mindfulness that really becomes very strong. Yeah.
And there's one more question about yoga. This is something I am interested in, with positions, like with postures or with movements. I think, I'm not sure if that's true, but I think with every posture, there's like a breathing associated with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there, because is it from a health point of view, or is it just more of meditation, mindfulness?
Well, I mean, there are different sorts of yoga, of course. There are lots and lots of different types of yoga. Now I practice, well, I've practiced various types of yoga, Ashtanga and Vinyasa flow and Iyengar, but they're very physical practices, so that they're strong postures and a lot of emphasis on breath, especially in the Ashtanga. And you breathe in a particular way. But of course, that when you do a posture, it affects your breathing because, you know, you're changing your body shape. But the breathing in the posture is really key because it helps you to sort of really experience that posture, but it's also bringing energy into your body. So you try and keep your breath sort of full and deep, whatever you're doing. And that takes a bit of practice because it's quite hard. In some postures, it's quite hard to breathe because you kind of tie yourself in knots, aren't you? And you've got to find space to breathe, but that kind of is part of the discipline. So I think the breathing for me, it's very much about the focus, and so you're in the moment. So it's very easy to do a posture, but let your mind wander off. But if you're kind of focusing on your breath and you actually, you know, counting the breath, even if you're not counting out loud, you're sort of saying, right, here, this is my breath, this is my 6th breath, this is my 7th breath. You know, you kind of, it's very much about the sort of mindfulness of it. But also I think the breathing helps because if you breathe in a particular way, then you're not going to be holding postures too tightly or, you know, straining, because if you're straining, you can't breathe properly, of course, if you're working too hard. So one of the things I always say to my students is just ease off, you know, just don't feel, there's not competition. It might take you 10 years to get there, but you'll get there. You don't have to get there now, but you know, you can just work at a level that's comfortable for you. And most of the yoga postures have got levels. You can approach them at different levels, and you just breathe, and you just get into the posture and you breathe comfortably, and you should feel you're going to experience your body and your breath in that particular position, and then you move out of it. So it's just, you know, it's about not working too hard, not damaging your body as well. It's that respect for your body. You know, there's a lot of this in yoga philosophy, you know, non-violence to yourself, non-violence to others, and that non-violence to yourself is respecting your body, of course. So yeah,
I think this is good philosophy, like, because I do sport, and I usually, like, when you're new to sports, you like, okay, I want to go this level, like,
yeah. And then you get injured and you think,
and
no, that's my ego. That's my
ego
ego kicking in. I push myself too hard. Well, sometimes you get injured because it's an accident, but sometimes, a lot of the time you get injured because you just work too hard. Yeah. So reining it in is quite a big thing in yoga. It really isn't about pushing yourself to the limit. It's about finding a place where you're comfortable and you're able to focus and breathe. And it's, you know, you shouldn't be enjoying it. It should feel kind of challenging, but kind of in a good way. Yeah.
And maybe I'm probably gonna start thinking about taking yoga from
yeah. Yeah, and if you're very sporty, I mean, you should try one of the yoga forms that, you know, is quite physical, because I think you'll enjoy that. I mean, my class that I run, which you're very welcome to join us, Rasha. Give you the link. But you know, I have a lot of men who come because they quite like the physical side of it, because we do a lot of you know, there's a lot of upper body strength, a lot of arm balances, a lot of handstands, a lot of
wow.
Well, I have a couple of my students, and they're just obsessed by handstands. I keep saying to them, it's not about the handstands, but yeah, we do handstands. It's not all about the handstands. But they love, because they're bodybuilders, and they love that kind of strength thing, you know. You're lifting your body up, and you kind of, it's very powerful. And there's a lot of flow to it, a lot of energy, so you get quite sweaty and you get out of breath, and it's a very physical thing. And not all yoga's like that. Some yoga's very sort of low key and much more kind of relaxing. And you know, there's something for everyone, isn't there? So, and I quite like I like the more physical forms, because I've always liked doing exercise, and I was like keeping fit. So I quite like the fact you get out of breath a bit when you're trying to control your breath, but it's quite hard because you kind of, I mean, this is hard, yeah. But you're trying to sort of, you know, trying to go with it in a yoga way, but at the same time, it's still quite strong. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge, and you've got to kind of control that. There's a lot of work to be done, but I like that. Yeah.
Okay. Can you do a handstand?
course. Well, I'm not doing one now, but yes, I can do a handstand. But no, I say of course. It's actually quite a difficult posture, and a lot of people find that hard. But yeah, we do lots of handstands, and we do you know, lots of arm balancing. So you're just sort of lifting yourself up and balancing on your hands and stuff. But there's also a lot of kind of much more relaxing stuff as well, where you just kind of really let yourself go and go deep into a stretch. But it's a nice mix of strength and balance, and
So I was correct when I said in the beginning you're an athlete for me, like doing a handstand.
One day I'll do. We had a PhD student a few years ago called Ali Everett, and he was great. He was such a good teacher. He actually is now an A-level teacher. But he used to come to my yoga classes, and he'd actually trained as a gymnast when he was younger. And he was really good at he was really good at the arm balances and the handstands and all that. But the other thing was his forte, he could do a backflip. He could just flip himself over, you know.
Yeah.
He sort of did, he used to help us, you know, some of the people in class sort of learn how to do this. But when he was doing first year supervision classes, he'd say to the students, he said, right, at some point during this term, I'm just going to stop and I'm going to do a backflip in the classroom. And I'm not going to tell you when it's going to happen, but one week I'm going to stop and do a backflip. And he said this was great for attendance because students had to come every week because we're waiting for his big turn. He just flip himself over, you know. So I thought this was quite clever. Use your talents.
Yeah, I think
I've not done that yet, but one day maybe.
One day. A backflip is just, for me, it's just so hard. I've never done it. The only thing I can do is like the cartwheel one.
Oh, cartwheels, yeah.
The cartwheel is easy, and once I did it, like, oh, I'm so happy I found it. Then
they're a lot of fun, aren't they? Cartwheels are fun. You do them when you're kids, and it's actually one of the things I really enjoy about the yoga is you're able to do these things you did when you were a kid. You know, like handstands and backflips and cartwheels, and you know, you're just able to do that because your kind of body's kind of used to it. So I like the fact I can still do some of these things. I'm not a long time since I was a kid, but yeah, I have to warm up, of course. I can't just go and do it anymore. That's you get older, you have to kind of get yourself warmed up to it.
Yeah,
I can't just do things. No, I will do myself an injury.
And I think the yoga is more functional exercise. Like with the gym, you can push, like, let's say 70 kg punch press or 80 kg punch press, but you may not be able to do like the handstand thing. Where in yoga you'll be able to you do like lots of beautiful things, like same as calisthenics. You do lots of beautiful things that you don't think you'll be able to. You don't have much tension in your muscles. Like you can move, and like once you with some exercises, once you have like to do like lots of gym and those stuff, and you don't do a martial arts, you don't do functional training, you become so stiff, your muscle like muscle cramp, even though like you're trying to get muscle cramps and those stuff. But I think with yoga it's
well, it's a good balance if you do a lot of exercise, and you know that if you do something where it does tighten your body, like you know, bodybuilding and you know, weights and football and running and other things that can make your hamstrings really short. I think if you're doing a lot of that sort of exercise, it's really important to stretch. So whether that's yoga or you just do some stretches, but you know, it's really important that you balance that out. Otherwise, your body gets tighter and tighter, and eventually that's going to cause problems. You're going to cause pain, or you know, you're going to get you know, you can get injured. And I think, you know, it's always important to try and keep flexible as well as strong. So yeah, I mean, I've played various sports over the years, and I've always found the yoga really helps that. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time. It was wonderful.
Well, it was very nice. That I've enjoyed that. Yeah. So
thank you very much. It was wonderful, both from like knowing about you from an academic till your life as a yoga and an athlete. It was very amazing to having you here today. Thank you.
Well, it's been lovely to chat, and enjoyed that a lot. So looking forward to seeing the video.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And are you back on campus?